If you are an AMD shareholder, get ready. And this time, I mean it. You guessed it. This week, we do have earnings. And on today's episode, we're going to take a closer look at everything that you, as an AMD investor, should know before the company reports on Tuesday. So let's take a closer look in today's episode. All right. So first, a quick price target action. We can see right now the stock is sitting at $256 year to date. The stock is doing up. It's doing amazing, up 112% with a market cap of $415 billion. And on today's episode, we are going to take a closer look at what the market's expecting, at what are some of the recent things impacting the overall stock, and what are some recent earnings that can give us some indication of how AMD could do during these earnings. But like always, if you want to get great charts, make sure to check out fiscal.ai/Jose to get all these great charts. If you're curious, for example, about revenue expectations for this upcoming quarter, we can see the market is expecting roughly $8.75 billion in revenue. And for guidance, over $9 billion, closer to $9.2 billion. You can kind of look at all these things like earnings per share, forward PE ratio, and this is a platform I use on a daily basis. So if you are a long-term investor, make sure to check out fiscal.ai/Jose. Now, I've created a pretty cool slideshow, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Here, we're going to look at everything that the market is expecting for quarter three. So first, like we saw from fiscal.ai, revenue is expected to be $8.75 billion. And that's roughly 28.3% year over year growth and 13.6% sequential growth. Now, earnings per share is expected to be $1.17, up roughly 27.2% year over year, and up a crazy 143% quarter over quarter. For those that are not familiar, last quarter we did get hit by a inventory charge due to China products not being able to ship and writing off of inventory for the MI308. Now we're kind of normalizing that, but because of that, we are going to see a nice sequential growth in earnings per share. Yet, regardless, we still see a nice year over year growth. Now, in forms of the segment and how it's expecting, the overall gaming market is expected to be $1.05 billion. That's up about 127% year over year. The client market, $2.6 billion, up about 38% year over year. The biggest one is data center, which is expected to be almost $4.2 billion with about 18% year over year growth. And the embedded market is expected to be $900 million, short of the $1 billion mark and closer to a decline of 2.5% year over year. Now, a few things that stood out: gaming and client, right? Those markets are definitely picking back up. The embedded market, while it's no longer, well, it's not in the green, it seems like there has been some form of flatlining happening here, which I do think it's pretty impressive, right? It's no longer going to be bleeding. And once this market turns around for AMD, this is a massive cash flow. Now, overall, we're going to see that the data center market is roughly 50% of total revenue. And that's the market that analysts are going to be extremely critical on. Now, stock performance, the stock is doing amazing, up 112% year to date. If you are a semiconductor, if you are an AMD investor, congratulations. This stock has done really well for you this year. Massive strong buy analyst consensus. 30 out of 44 analysts expect this to be a buy right now. Now, before we go any further, if you are serious about the AI market, about the semiconductor market, make sure to hit the subscribe and thumbs up button. I'm trying to hit 85,000 subs by the end of the year, and this is going to be the best place you're going to get that information in video form for free. Now, if you want to elevate your AI and semiconductor knowledge, make sure to check out the community. I just built it. And because I'm just building it, I've created this founding member offer where you get 50% off your annual subscription. The community has grown so quickly. We are up to 80 members in less than a week. And once we hit 100 members, I will start cutting off this founding member offer. So right now, 50% your annual subscription as long as you stay subscribed. Or if you want just free newsletter written down, you can also subscribe to my newsletter, all that at whatthechip.com. Now, if we go back here to the slideshow, let's look at what the market is expecting for quarter four. So for quarter four, analysts are expecting roughly $9.6 billion in revenue. That represents a 25% year over year growth and a 10% sequential growth. There are three main drivers anticipated for this strong guidance. And this is what the market is going to see, right? If we get better, if they come out and say, look, $10 billion in revenue, which could be possible depending on the strength of the MI355, that would create a massive bullish sentiment for the stock. Remember, this quarter, we are expecting roughly $8.75 billion. By next quarter, we're expecting closer to $10 billion. And there's continued AI and data center momentum, which is obviously going to be pushing off to the AMD's MI355 and their epic Turing CPUs. We're also seeing some strength in the AI PC market for the client space and the gaming space, and that's also creating opportunities here for AMD. Now, in the past few months, we've had 5 recent updates that I think every form of investor should know. The first one is that open AI partnership, right? The transformative 6 gigawatt agreement to deploy AMD Instinct GPUs, with the first one starting in the second half of 2026 with the MI450. And the CFO mentions that they expect to deliver tens of billions of dollars in revenue with this partnership here. We would love to get more insight about this, right? Unfortunately, the real revenue isn't going to start into the second half of 2026, but at least some clarity of what type of numbers we can actually see. If they give us some strong guidance, yes, next year we're going to see some strong numbers of 10 plus billions of dollars just in the third quarter, right? I think that's what's going to be crucial with this open AI partnership. We already know it's happening, but investors are going to be curious of how much it actually means, right? It's a number that analysts are going to want to put to project future price targets. The second one, which I think was also pretty impressive, was the Oracle GPU deployment. So Oracle to deploy roughly 50,000 MI450 GPUs on their Oracle Cloud infrastructure starting in quarter three of 2026, with partnerships extends to 2027 and beyond. Now, these two partnerships, in my opinion, if they succeed, is what helps AMD become a trillion-dollar company. And for me, this might suck for most investors. I honestly don't care what happens this earnings. To me, these two projects, which are expected in the second half of 2026, are what are gonna help AMD become a trillion-dollar company. If from now to then we get a massive volatility wave, I'm okay with that. If we get a massive sell-off, I'm okay with that because I will most likely purchase because of these two partnerships right here. I think these are what's gonna make AMD investors extremely rich in the future if everything succeeds as plans. Now, there are three other updates. Third, CT system divestiture happening. So they completed a $3 billion sale of the manufacturing unit of CT systems. This is pretty good. It's going to be a nice amount of money coming in here for AMD, where they will be able to invest back into research and development. The fourth thing was Helios rack scale. At OCP, AMD showed a standing open rack scale AI with Helios. And this showcases that AMD is ready with this system, right? They're moving in the right direction. It's not just hopes and dreams. There's an actual product behind Helios. And number 5, which is also another interesting one, is US sovereign AI. There were a few supercomputers that were announced by the Department of Energy, Lux with the MI355 for early 2026, and Discovery with the MI430X for Department of Energy sometime in 2027. So overall, we continue to see nice partnerships wins, which are all going to bring a nice amount of money to AMD. Now, we also did have earnings. Big Tech had earnings, and we also had Intel and TSMC report earnings. This is what investors should learn about it. So Microsoft, all 4 companies, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, and Google, either increased their total capex or mentioned that next year capex is going to be much higher. So while not every one of these uses AMD as AI accelerators, all of these do use it for their CPU product. So at least that's the first tailwind there. The second one is Microsoft and Meta do use AMD as AI accelerators. So you have that opportunity there. Now, Microsoft also shared that there is some strength happening with the AI PC market, and that overall can help AMD in their client side, as well as obviously they have the Ryzen CPU that is very, very popular in that market. Now, with Amazon, Amazon continues to use AMD for the Epic CPU solutions. We still haven't seen a massive win in the GPU there, but that's obviously an opportunity in the future. Alphabet, very similar. Alphabet increased their overall capital expenditure, and all these players mentioned that they need more capacity, more compute, because they just have crazy, crazy demand. Now, unfortunately for AMD, Alphabet is very similar to Amazon, where they're mainly usage of their CPUs, but it does open up the opportunity if the accelerator market ever enters into Alphabet. Finally, Meta is a heavy user of the MI300s. Would love to hear any clarity on the MI355s, how many are shipping and stuff like that. But overall, the sentiment for the overall AI market is still extremely, extremely bullish. So the big picture for AMD shareholders, hyperscaler capex is not slowing. Now, vendors mix matter because they all have their own unique usage of AMD. But overall, all of them are going to be spending either more money on CPUs, which is still a very, very strong market for AMD. Now, I also mentioned that TSMC and Intel reported earnings, and they did share some great insight. Now, TSMC mentions that the AI accelerator market is still expected to grow roughly 40% in compounded annual growth rate for the next few years. That's extremely bullish for AMD's MI400 series. And Intel gave a lot of bullish signals, in my opinion, for AMD. Intel admitted that they're in supply constraint nodes. They're supply constraint on their 10 and 7 Intel nodes. AMD is going to take that opportunity to get more market share from Intel. The second thing is Intel mentions that their 18A yields are adequate, but not yet margin appropriate. This gives Intel a lot less wiggle room on pricing power and gives AMD the ability to, even if they lower ranks, they still make money. The final thing Intel mentioned is they're redirecting wafers to servers, creating client openings. Again, Intel is supply constrained, and this is going to allow AMD to continue to get more market share in both the server side and the client side. So I'm pretty excited for earnings, and these are the things that I'm extremely curious about. First and most important, obviously, is the data center GPU shipments and backlogs. Unfortunately, usually Lisa Su doesn't give us the full picture. I hope she gives us a full picture this quarter. Updates on the ROCm software traction. We're definitely hearing a lot of great movements there. The Epic CPU, what's going on with there? We continue to win market share. Is that still a story? I believe the answer is yes. The AI PC market for the consumer, how is that moving? Are we winning market share? I think the answer is yes. Any kind of insight in the supply in the kind of the supply chain line for AMD and how that's improving and what are some of the constraints? So all this, in my opinion, is crucial for AMD shareholders. Now, I do believe AMD will outperform in forms of what the market is expecting, but how the market or the stock price will react, that's a completely different answer. Anything can go. Now, like I mentioned earlier in this episode, because of those two partnerships with OpenAI and Oracle, I believe this could be a $1 trillion company. So even if there is a sell-off after this massive run-up, in my opinion, it would be more of a buying dip for me to increase my position on AMD because the long term is there for the patient investor. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Take care, have a good day, and see you all next time.